Wolf, get away from those sheep.
Bollocks.
You're listening to the Wolf and the Shepherd podcast, broadcasting from Fort Worth in the great state of Texas. Now, get ready for this episode of the Wolf and the Shepherd.
Welcome to this episode of the Wolf and the Shepherd. Today we're going to talk about some stuff on a serious note. We've had some questions submitted to us, and I know we've done these Ask Us Anything episodes, but we kind of filtered out some of the little personal questions and everything that people have submitted to us. So we figured, hey, let's go ahead and get rid of some of those personal questions that apparently y'all want to actually hear about. So we're going to filter through some of those today.
Yeah, these were all actually from one listener who emailed us, and they made a comment about, I really enjoyed the goofy take on Ask Me Anything, but they had some serious questions to ask us.
Oh, I thought these were from multiple people.
No, it's just from one person.
Oh, so we're literally doing an episode just for one listener.
Yeah, for one listener, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Pretty much like the first episode we ever did.
Yeah, this sounds a little creepy.
Yeah, well...
Now I'm a little bit creeped out.
Well, there's 20 questions, and to be honest, when I first read it, it sounds like either somebody's trying to fish our personal information so they have the answers to the security questions to reset our passwords, or they're filling in the eHarmony dating profiles on our behalf.
So the first part, I see a problem with. The second part, I don't really see a problem with.
Oh my word. Have you ever used eHarmony? Well, obviously not, because you were dating your wife before the internet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, not before the internet, but before internet dating sites.
Right,
yeah.
Well, eHarmony, that's that one where you have to basically fill out your entire biography, and you not even allowed to see photos of the person you're talking to until like about round 3 of questions, which is a no-no for me because I normally make my mind up within 2 seconds.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
It is terrible. I knew I had a friend who went on it.
How has that business model made it so long? I mean, they're still around, right?
As far as I know, but what they rely on is experts in dating, which is probably, I don't know, Matthew, who's aged 19 and needs a part-time job and has never dated anybody in his life. But they have these experts who match you with somebody else, and they go on for pages and pages. You literally have to write paragraphs and paragraphs about yourself, and then they decide who's a good fit for you. They don't use any computational matching, any algorithms. It's actually people sifting through all your answers and thinking, oh, this person would be a good match for this person. And so after about 2 or 3 exchanges, you're allowed to ask your potential partners 1 or 2 questions. And then after you've done that for a few rounds, you're allowed to send 1 photo of yourself. And then it kind of evolves from there, but you're not allowed to directly contact each other through email because you can't give your email address, phone number, anything like that. Everything has to be through eHarmony. So,
yeah, but what if you're not that good of a writer?
Well,
I mean, that sounds like it's kind of prejudice against people that can't write about themselves very well.
Well, then you just go to the bar at Chili's, I think.
Oh, or Applebee's.
Yeah, or Applebee's. Let's not forget them. So anyway, I know that was a kind of anti-eHarmony.com little.
Well, we do not have an official dating website sponsor.
No, we don't.
Do we want one of those, though?
I don't think so, actually.
Oh, I think we do.
Well, yeah, obviously we'll be sponsored by anybody if they pay us money, but
absolutely,
it's not in the top 5.
Maybe the top 10.
Yeah. So before we get started with the questions, I just wanted to give a shout out to all our listeners in India. We know that you're going through a really bad time at the moment.
They are. The whole COVID thing. Yeah.
So we're praying for you. I hope your country, all your people get over it, get through all this. We love you, and we just hope things get better for you really quick. Yeah,
and by the way, since you gave that shout out, and I really appreciate the fact that you did that, and yeah, we're worried about you, India. We want you to get through this, but I've got to give a shout out. I got to get something off my chest. Do you mind if I get something off my chest before we get started?
Yeah.
So I was in 7-Eleven the other day, and I'm standing in line, and this woman is on her phone.
You told this story on the Sharks episode, mate.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Remember I told you if it was in England, she'd get slapped upside the head.
Oh.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. All right. Well, I'm glad you remember what we're talking about. You know, you gotta keep me in check. It
wasn't a great story the first time around, so let's not tell it twice.
No, I thought it was a good story.
Yeah. So
I'm going to try to tell it again on the next episode.
So head into the first question. Right. Where did you grow up?
Fort Worth, Texas, baby. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas.
That's not where you were born, though, was it?
No, I try to keep that a secret.
Yeah.
I was born in Chicago, but my parents moved here when I was 2 months old.
Right.
So all I've known is Texas my whole life.
Yeah.
I am not technically an official native Texan, but it's not my fault.
Right.
Because 2 months later, I was in Texas.
Right. Yeah, I grew up, obviously, in England.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Although you do sound like you have more of a Dallas accent than a Fort Worth accent.
Yeah, that's the kind of mingle of English and Texan.
Right.
But yeah, no, I grew up in England in a area called East Anglia. And
what part of London is that?
It's about an hour and a half outside of London. I lived in just outside the city of Cambridge in a small town.
Oh.
Not much going on.
Just a small town girl in a small town world, right?
Well, something like that.
Yeah.
So, next question. Did you enjoy grade school?
Grade school. You know, here's the weird thing about me in grade school. Because of my birthday, I couldn't go into public school until like I was going to be too old. So my parents wanted me to go to school early. So the only way that worked in Texas way back then was to go to private school.
Right.
So my parents put me in private school. So I went to kindergarten and first grade at one school, second grade at a different school. Then in third grade, I finally went to public school, went to one school in third grade, a different school in fourth grade, then a different school in fifth grade, then a different school, sixth, seventh, and eighth, and then high school. So I went to a bunch of schools, but they were all within like 3 miles of each other. It was very, very bizarre.
Yeah. I don't know if I enjoyed grade school or not, to be honest, because school in England is a bit dour, as you can probably tell by the Smiths lyrics, actually.
Yeah.
You know, there's not much going on. You don't really have a big sports influence like you have in middle school and high school in the States, where, you know, people kind of rally around, you know, the sports teams and everything. I mean, I played soccer in, you know, grade school and high school, and we won like the national, championships like twice. And we had about 8 people and their dog watch the final.
Right, but let's back up. So over in England, there's grade school soccer. I mean, it's not just going to PE class. There's actual like soccer teams at school in grade school.
You have a school team, yeah.
In like elementary school.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's just PE over here.
Oh no.
You play, crab soccer. You play the ridiculous hockey. You play dodgeball. I don't think you can play dodgeball anymore. I think that's offensive now. Yeah. But there were no grade school teams over here, and there still isn't.
No, we had basically like 98% of the year you just played soccer and PE. The other 2%, you'd probably get to play basketball maybe once a year, and the equivalent of baseball, which we called rounders, which I think the only difference was it was a shorter bat. But other than that, no, I mean, all you did was play soccer, and if you didn't play soccer, you were basically a bit of a dork, and you just had to sit it out.
So when you played basketball, did you actually play basketball with a soccer ball?
No.
Because they didn't have basketballs, you were just throwing a soccer ball through a hoop?
No, we did have basketballs, but the point
Are you sure? Did they just paint a soccer ball to look like a basketball?
No.
Are you positive?
I'm absolutely positive.
Okay.
It might have been a pumpkin with a spring inside it. I'm not sure, but it was just terrible because like we never really played it. Nobody played it outside of school, and so everybody was horrible at it. And we did actually have, in high school, a school basketball team but every other high school was like pretty much exactly the same. So you'd play a full game and the score would be like 3-1 or something. It wasn't.
So it sounds like the WNBA.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, and one thing I didn't enjoy about grade school is the food.
I actually enjoyed the food in grade school.
My word. It was like, I don't know if it really improved since the time of Charles Dickens, to be honest. It was just slop on a plate.
Probably a lot of curry.
No curry.
Oh.
That'd have been a luxury. No, it was like watery mashed potato, some overcooked Brussels sprouts, some unidentifiable meat, and they'd give you a dessert, which there was something called blancmange, which was a bit like a jelly type thing. And we had something called semolina, which was like a rice pudding.
Yeah, so basically they're just making up these concoctions and giving them strange names.
Oh, yeah, it's just crap. Yeah, basically. Yeah. So
you didn't have the big pan of pizza that were cut into rectangles.
Not
and
when I was in school. No,
on
we
Friday,
never had
you're like,
pizza in
oh, it's pizza day, and you get that rectangular piece of nasty pizza, but you are so looking forward to that because it's pizza day.
No, we never had stuff like that, or like hamburgers or any of that stuff.
Sounds like a terrible upbringing.
We might get lucky and get baked beans about once every 2 weeks, but that was it.
Oh, yeah. No wonder so many people, come over to the U.S. They're not really fleeing religious persecution. They're fleeing
the food.
Yeah, fleeing terrible meals.
Yeah. Now, did you have a good relationship with your parents when you were a teenager?
I did, actually. It was a little bit different for me. My parents are much older as far as like my friends' parents. So they were almost a generation away. So it was a different kind of dynamic between my parents. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, a lot of people would say, like, I'd go somewhere with my dad, and they would say, oh, you're out with your grandfather today. And I'd be like, no, it's my dad and everything. So it was a lot different for me. I looked up to him. I still look up to him, still appreciate his opinion, of course. But even when I was a teenager, I realized most of my friends' parents are idiots compared to my dad, because he already had a whole generation of experience, and he was trying to impart all of that stuff to me. So, yeah, I mean, back then, had a great relationship with him and still do to this day.
Yeah. Now, I know both your parents, and they're pretty cool. I mean, especially your dad. I mean, I was in the same situation. I think they were, I want to say maybe 40 when I was born. So, I mean, yeah, it was a big gap.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, I realized when I turned, whatever it was, 41, 42, and, I've already got 4 kids, and I'm thinking, I'm now at the age that my dad was when he had me. And I'm thinking about all the things that I learned through that. And if I were to have a kid right now, which thank goodness I can't do because the wife got fixed on the last one.
It was too much effort.
Now, there is that, but at least I can't have another kid, at least with the wife.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there. But I'm thinking it's one of those, if you knew then what you knew now kind of deal. And I think my dad and my mom kind of took advantage of that they had all of that stuff that they had learned in their life. Because, I mean, I had my first kid at like 23, 24. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter's almost 18. I'm thinking, like 4 or 5 more years, she's going to be the age that I was when I had her.
Right. Yeah. Well, my parents were like pretty traditional. They grew up kind of in the country, and so really weren't in touch with much.
Right.
Obviously, there was no internet. We had 2 TV stations, 3 later on when maybe I was about 10 or 11. And, they were pretty insular. They didn't really know much about the world, so they didn't really have too much to pass on to me. I mean, everything I kind of learned was either through school, books or church.
Yeah, but
watching
they really
TV.
didn't have any reason to, right? I mean, they were worried about what was going on right there, worried about paying the bills and going to work and doing that. So why did they care what was going on in Mongolia?
Yeah, I mean, they taught me the basics, like don't eat glass, don't try and suck the gas out of the car and that type of stuff. But
what about rocks? Did they tell you not to eat rocks?
No, they figured they'd just let me learn that the hard way.
Oh, okay.
So did you have any pets growing up?
I did. It was all dogs. Well, for the most part, it was dogs. I remember having 2 or 3 dogs when I was growing up. Great dogs. All of them were great dogs. I did have a gerbil that I talked my dad into letting me get a gerbil, and we got the little plastic house that the gerbil was in, had the little tubes and all that. And of course, I didn't want to clean the cage because, I mean, you know me well enough. I don't clean anything up. It took us 7 months to finally clean up the studio to where we didn't have trash sitting in the corner, right? I mean, we're both lazy with that. And so I remember having that gerbil, and I had a friend come over, and he said, "Oh, I want to hold the gerbil." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got him out of the cage, and I think that was the first time he'd been out of the cage in like a year. And so my friend was holding the gerbil, and the gerbil bit him on the finger and wouldn't turn loose. And I was pulling on the gerbil. My friend was crying, and I'm like, I don't know. My dad comes in, and he takes his finger, and he like thumped the gerbil in the nose, and the gerbil finally let loose. And then the gerbil lived in the garage for about another year because he wasn't allowed in my room anymore. And then I think it was like 2 months, I forgot to feed the gerbil and walked out there, and it was dead. And so we threw the whole cage and everything away.
So if there are any gerbil sponsors out there, you might want to give us a bypass because
we don't need gerbil sponsors. We
don't need gerbil sponsors. We can agree on that. Now
I did have a lot of fish though.
You did?
At one time I had 7 fish tanks in my room, and I really liked fish, and so I had all these different fish tanks, and I had a lot of fish. And I remember my parents were out of town, and I had, all these power strips plugged in with all the aerators and all this, and I had all these fish tanks in my room, and all of a sudden, one of the power strips like messed up and kind of tripped the breaker or whatever. I'm like, oh, what happened? I reached down and I turned it back on, and my room caught fire. And so there was this fire right by the fish tanks. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to set the house on fire. What am I going to do? And I'm like, wait a second. I've got all this water in my room from these fish tanks. So I'd scoop the water out of the fish tanks to put the fire out. Years later, when I moved out, my parents decided to turn my room into a guest room. And then they asked me, what is this big black stain on the wall? I'm like, oh, that's where I almost burnt the house down because the fish tanks, caught fire.
Yeah, I bet the fish were waiting with bated breath because initially they probably thought they were safe because they were swimming in water. And, I know they're not normally very smart, but they probably figured, water can't catch fire.
True. That is true.
Yeah. My parents had a couple of dogs, one called Lassie, which was a German Shepherd, and another one called Mitzi, which was like one of those Yorkshire Terrier type things, but they were outside dogs. Now, they had a big area to run, but there was a fence keeping them in, and so they weren't necessarily that friendly. Every time they saw me, they just barked their heads off. We had a feral cat who never stepped foot in the house. Her name was Judy. I think she was named after Judy Garland for some strange reason.
Too bad. If you would have had that cat today, it would have probably been named Karen, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And she was all right. Outside that, my first dog was called Blackie.
He was brown?
He was black.
Oh, okay.
And one of his favorite things to do was eat coal. So Blackie seemed
coal?
Like coal, yeah.
Like what you burn to cook food or keep warm?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he had this kind of quirk about him. He loved banana peel. And he would take it and he would bury it in the backyard. And if you walked out in the backyard, he'd follow you. And if you walked anywhere near where he'd buried the banana peel, he'd bite you on the ankles. So it was like walking through a minefield. So he was a lot of fun.
Oh.
He finally had to be put down because the neighbour's kid, he kind of was teasing him. And he jumped up and basically dragged the kid over the fence and savaged him a little bit. Not greatly because he was quite a small dog. But
so the neighbor kid was teasing the dog, or the dog was teasing the neighbor kid?
No, the neighbor kid was teasing the dog.
Oh.
And like I said, he was a pretty small dog. So, I mean, it wasn't a big savaging.
Right.
But, you know, we had to have him put down after that. Then the next pet I had while I was still kid was a golden Labrador named Duke, Duke.
Yeah.
And he was the village rapist, basically, because we made the mistake of never getting him fixed.
Oh, no.
And so if anybody bent down anywhere near him, he'd go run, knock them over, and dry hump them while they were laying on the floor. And he was a breed of Labrador. I think they called a Redlander. And so he was huge, the hugest kind of breed of Labrador you could get. So once he was on top of you couldn't do anything about it. Now, thankfully, he never did that to me. But he dry humped my dad constantly. I mean, like if my dad bent down, picked something up, he'd make a rush for it, knock him down. He was also a thief. We had the police come round multiple times because he would jump over the inadequate fence my dad had constructed to keep him in. And in those days, the milkman would not only drop off milk, he'd drop off like yogurt and eggs and all that stuff. And so Duke would go and steal it, bring it back, and eat it in the backyard. And so you'd come out in the morning and there'd be like all these, empty egg boxes, yogurt cartons and stuff. And yeah, we had the police come round.
Yeah, but you can't fault the dog for that, right? I mean, the dog's hungry. I mean, the dog just wants some food.
Yeah. So, yeah, those were my pets. Now, what's your favorite childhood memory?
I got to admit, I've been asked this question before. And I think my favorite childhood memory is when my dad picked me up from school early and took me to the movie theater at North Hills Mall, which no longer exists. This is back when movie theaters were in malls. I mean, you didn't have standalone movie theaters like you do now. And my dad said, I want to go watch this movie. And so he picks me up from school and takes me to the movie. And it was Dirty Harry and the Deadpool. So I am.
How old were you?
I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and he takes me to a Dirty Harry movie.
Wow.
And it was a great movie. But, I mean, Dirty Harry movies are all about killing people. I mean, Clint Eastwood being a badass and everything else. And I remember that as a kid.
There was some nudity in the first couple, I think, as well, wasn't
there?
there?
Yeah, there wasn't in Deadpool.
Yeah.
But I remember that in that same mall, there was a Mervyn's. Did y'all have Mervyn's in England?
Never heard of
Okay, so at the North Hills Mall over inside the Metroplex here in DFW, my mom had a very good friend that they kind of followed around with my parents. And, my parents had this kind of circle of friends that they all kind of decided to move together. My dad worked for the FAA, and all these other guys, they worked for the FAA. So they kind of followed everybody around. And my mom's friend, who was married to one of my dad's friends, was the manager at Mervyn's. And I remember she took me to see Batman, the Michael Keaton Batman in 85. And they collected Corvettes also. And I remember my mom dropped me off, but my Aunt Norma, who's now deceased, she took me to that movie, and she had a black Corvette. And in the movie, as a kid at 7 or 8 years old, I'm thinking, this Corvette looks just like the Batmobile. Yeah. Aunt Norma, you're driving the Batmobile. And I had to tell her the whole time, I'm like, we're in the Batmobile. They have a Batmobile. And now I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, they don't look anything similar.
Yeah.
So what about you?
I think going to the beach. Now, in England, we didn't have very many good beaches because on one side, you've got something called the English Channel, which is in between England and France. Right, mainland
That's
Europe.
The south side.
No, that's the east side of it. Then on the west side of it, you've got the Atlantic.
Right.
And because of how far north, England is, the water was pretty much always freezing. Now, on the south side of England, near like Dorset and stuff, you did actually have, some pretty nice beaches, Cornwall, and you could actually go surfing there, and the water was relatively warm. It's a different water flow. But where I was on the west side of the country, even though it's called East Anglia for some strange reason, we had this little kind of bay area called the Wash, and the beach area I went to was called Hunstanton. Now, it was, if you or I were driving, probably just over an hour's drive, but my dad always drove at about 40 miles an hour, so it took us over 3 hours to get there and 3 hours to get back. So it was like a day trip. You could basically fly to Florida in the time it took us to get to Hunstanton. And, the beach was like, if the tide was out, it was like about a 200-yard walk to get to the sea. And it had such a slow gradient that you could walk into the water. You could be maybe 50, 75 yards and it'd still only be about waist high.
Gotcha.
But, I think that's my favorite kind of memory going there. We'd go like twice a year because that was the only opportunity at that time in my life that I ever, saw the sea.
Right.
And I just used to enjoy it. I'd go out there, pick up some crabs, try not to get stung by jellyfish. And, like I said, that was a twice yearly event growing up.
No, that's cool. Yeah. Like that.
Now, I know we spoke about this on a previous podcast, but can you remember your first girlfriend? And I know this is a tragic event for both of us. But
first girlfriend.
Remember the one who you didn't talk to?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. No, I already told that story. Yeah. I'll tell the abbreviated story. Yeah, the one that I said, "Hey, will you go out with me?" She said yes. Then we didn't talk for like 2 weeks, and then I got the message on the chalkboard from her friend saying, she wants to break up. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't remember in the previous episode or not, but that girl is actually one of my Facebook friends.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She lives out in California, Veronica Chiza. Yeah. I doubt you're probably even listening to this, and you probably are saying, yeah, Max, I really don't remember that, and that's creepy that you actually remember that. But, yeah, that was my first one.
Well, I have a similar story. It was a girl called Alison Locke, and she was actually the prettiest girl in school, and that's not me just saying it. She really was. And she asked me out on a field trip, and I said yes, and then I completely blanked her for the next 4 days at school. Even though we came in close proximity, I just kind of turned my head the other way. I don't know if I was like just too embarrassed to talk to her. So, after about 4 days, I think her friend came up to me and said, "Oh, she's dumped you." Oh. And I was like about as devastated as you were. It's kind of, oh, okay.
I just realized something. I don't know how I just now remembered this, but the girl that wrote the message on the chalkboard, her name was Haley Brewer. So, Haley Brewer, if for some reason you're listening to this, I remember you delivered that bad news. I don't know how I just now remembered her name, but yeah, Haley Brewer was the one that delivered that bad news way back then. Yeah. Conspiracy. I think they assassinated JFK also.
Now, what was your first job you ever had?
My
first paying job.
My first paying job was working for my dad. My dad retired from the FAA in 1994 and decided he was going to open his own little consulting firm, and he needed somebody that knew how to use the computer better than him. And so I worked for my dad for years. I mean, I've only had 3 jobs in my entire life. Well, I guess if we call doing the podcast a job, now it's number 4 for me. So
I think that counts as indentured servitude.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that.
Now,
especially keeping up with you, it feels like a 5th job.
Now, my first job, well, before I worked for the Ministry of Defence doing all the naughty hacking stuff, I think probably playing soccer, because I got paid from when I signed my first professional contract when I was 16. I got a weekly wage. So I guess that was, I never had like a paper round or any of this type stuff. Soccer was my first paying job. So,
Yeah. So your first job was playing a game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
So, I liked my first two jobs. So it was like playing professional soccer and hacking computers for the government. So that was my job.
There you go.
Nice job.
Nothing wrong with that.
Now, outside of get rich information, if you could travel back in time and tell your 12-year-old self something, what would it be?
Don't be so lazy.
Yeah, but would you have taken...
I would like to actually tell my present self not to be so lazy.
Yeah, that probably doesn't count then, does it?
Yeah, I know. I look back at, school and everything else, and I coasted through everything.
Yeah.
I took advantage of the fact that, hey, I can just get by with the bare minimum and get through all this and not really actually put any effort into anything.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's basically how I live my life,
Right.
is the least amount of effort possible for everything.
Yeah. And I was the same way. I mean, school I found to be a bit of a breeze. I never got less than an A grade in my entire
I
grade
got
school.
bad grades because I didn't
Less
care.
than an A ever.
No, I didn't care. I
Yeah.
said, well, why should I get good grades? All I got to do is get these bad grades and still pass.
Yeah.
So I took it one step lower than you, and I'm like, I'll accept the bad grades as long as I pass. I don't care.
I just didn't find it hard, though. I mean, I figured, well, why am I going to spend like 3 hours doing this when I can pass it doing 2 minutes?
Well, yeah. I just got into the point that I just don't want to put that much effort into even taking the test.
Yeah.
I'll get through like the first part of the test. I'm like, I think that's enough. And then just, leave the rest of the test, and whether I get it right or not, I don't care.
Yeah. I think if I could give my 12-year-old self some advice, it'd probably be patient, because I think the biggest mistakes I've made in my life, or things which have cost me time or money, is where I've been impatient and I haven't, waited maybe as long as I should have to see how things figured out. I just kind of like jumped into it and, made mistakes probably right through my adult life doing the same thing. So if I could go back and just be like, just be patient, wait, observe, then make a decision. But I didn't do the observant thing. I just kind of like jumped into the decisions.
Well, both of us are impatient people. And we always wait till the last minute to do things, but at the same time, we're impatient. So, I totally get that part.
Yeah. So if that's our resume, if any companies out there want to hire us based upon those attributes, then
we will require $1 million a year salary, and we want to work 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
And
Including
we also
lunch
need
break.
a lunch break.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
It's scary how we think alike sometimes.
Now, where did you go to college? What did you study? And did you party hard?
So I went to the University of North Texas because, once again, I was lazy. I applied to 2 colleges, got accepted to both of them, but wanted to stay close. So I went to the University of North Texas, which is in Denton, Texas, which is just north of the DFW Metroplex. I went to school because I wanted to be a lawyer. I showed up and they said, okay, all the pre-law majors go to this room. It was in Wooten Hall, 200 and something was the room number. Showed up in that room and they said, okay, well, we don't have a pre-law major, but all the pre-law students take political science. So I'm like, okay, well, that's my major. So I signed up for political science, and then after 4 years of school, I said, I'm sick of school. I don't want to do this anymore. So when I graduated college, I didn't go to law school. Did I party hard? No, I didn't. My wife now, my girlfriend back then, I've spent most of my time with her. I was doing the band thing, being in a alternative rock band. That's what I thought I was going to do, was get famous doing that, and that didn't work out. But I did not party hard. I think she partied harder than I did.
Yeah.
based off of some stories that I've heard.
Yeah. Now, I actually went away to college pretty late. I was like 23 because I was still playing professional soccer up till about 21, and I got burnt out
so
on that.
you started college at 23?
Yeah.
Because I had graduated college at
Yeah.
21.
Yeah. I was still playing pro soccer, and then I went off to a little bit of a war in Yugoslavia.
Yeah, but wait, let's back up, because you and I have talked about this off the podcast,
Yeah.
but it was kind of weird when you explained to me that, like you said, you signed a contract to play soccer at 16.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we shouldn't even really be passing out driver's licenses at 16.
Yeah.
But you're signing a contract, and you actually are having a career at 16 playing a sport.
Yeah.
That to me just still seems kind of crazy that you can look at a 16-year-old and say, we're going to pay you this, sign this paper, we're going to take care of you, you're going to go out here and you're going to play soccer.
Yeah. Yeah, so by the time I went to college, I'd got quite a bit of money. I'd bought my parents a house. I'd paid for two of my other friends to come to college with me. And I had, still a lot of money, so I kind of did party quite hard. I went to the University of Central Lancashire in Preston, which is on the northwest coast, not far away from Manchester.
So right outside of London.
Yeah, about 6 hours maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did business information technology and marketing. That was an absolute breeze, not very difficult whatsoever.
But you didn't play soccer in college, right?
No.
I mean, you were done with soccer.
I was done.
Because here's the difference with America. It's always, you go to high school, you play football, you play basketball, you play whatever, and then you get this scholarship. And then that scholarship, you're playing the sport in college to kind of pay for college while you get this education. Most people don't go from college to professional. It's actually backwards over there. You actually do your professional sports career and then all of a sudden go to school.
Well, a lot of the time people will skip going to college if you're playing professional sports. I went just basically because I got super burnt out on soccer, because that's all I'd ever really done. And, I hadn't finished working for the Ministry of Defence, because I still did contract work for them, but decided to go away to college. And if you can recall, I actually ended up playing in NFL Europe as a wide receiver and kick return for the London Monarchs for a couple of years. And kind of about halfway through college, I decided that was too much work. So I just spent the last 2 years kind of...
That was kind of a sad, failed experiment with the NFL.
Yeah.
Because football, obviously outside of America, football is soccer.
Yeah.
But over here, football is football.
Right.
Soccer is soccer.
Yeah.
And so it was like the NFL decided, hey, we need to get this sport outside of America and try to get it kind of popular. So they did that NFL Europe thing, which, like you said, you played 2 seasons or whatever, but it didn't really last that long.
No.
It never caught on.
It was more for them to actually bring awareness to the sport, to sell the TV rights. The league didn't last that long, but it built up a big enough following, because, there are a lot of US military bases in Europe, especially in Western Europe.
Right.
And they were just trying to get,
well,
the sport recognized.
Everybody knows I'm a hockey fan. Hockey, I can watch it on TV, but it's not the same as watching it live.
Right.
So I could see that over there. It's like, hey, now you can watch it live. Watching sports live is so much better than watching it on TV.
Yeah.
So I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to say, hey, we want to give you that live sports experience, and maybe you will actually like this sport. The only one I can say that wouldn't work for is cricket.
Yeah,
I don't get cricket. Do you like cricket? No. I mean, cricket's big over in England.
We did have to play it in school, and the only reason we give it a free pass is because our Indian friends love playing cricket. It's their national sport.
Yeah, but it's such a weird sport. It's like croquet and baseball. I don't get it.
It is a strange sport. Now the second time I went to college was obviously when I came over to Texas.
Well, no. Now, hang on. Let's back up. The second time you went to college. So you didn't graduate the first time?
Yeah, I did, yeah. But I mean, I'm talking about when I came over to Texas.
Yeah, but who goes to college twice?
I did, because it's pretty much free.
Well, okay. I'll give you that one. Most people just want to go to school and get out.
Yeah, no. So I ended up going to TCU, Texas Christian University, doing psychosocial kinesiology. That was fun, but it was more kind of like part-time, and I did it. I had a lot of free time on my hands. I was coaching soccer, still doing contract computer work and stuff, and just figured, I'll go ahead and do something else with my spare time. And that was fun. I mean, it's a good school, but, I never did anything with a degree I got from it. I mean, a part of me did want to go on and do like, a master's and everything else, but I was like, what's the point?
Yeah, but let's be honest. How many people actually do something in the field that they go to college and study for?
Maybe some doctors.
Yeah, and teachers.
And lawyers.
And that's about it.
Maybe.
I mean, how many people get these degrees and then they turn around and they go off onto some other job that they didn't even study in college, but they got a bachelor's degree. They're like, I got a bachelor's degree in, female studies, but now
postmodern feminist thought.
Right. And now I'm going to open a business selling chicken wings.
So what was the first single and first album you ever bought?
Oh gosh. So I never bought singles. That was never my deal. I never bought any singles. I think I had a few that people gave me, but my first album was from Columbia House on vinyl, and it was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction.
No, you still owe Columbia House like about $400, don't you?
Probably more than that. Now, in my real name, probably like $50, but in the several fake names, not only Columbia House, but BMG, it's probably like $2,000.
Yeah.
But I remember getting Appetite for Destruction, and then my good friend Tommy Truelove actually has that record, and he offered to give it back to me, and I said, no, that's cool. You can keep that, because he was big into vinyl before I was. Of course, everybody had vinyl, and then it went to cassettes, then it went to CDs, and I'm like, I'm not going to listen to any of these records. And then I got back into vinyl, and when he found out I was getting back into vinyl, he's like, hey, you gave me these records. Do you want these back? I'm like, dude, I gave these to you. I'm not going to take them back. You keep them. But that was my first one. What about you?
First single I ever bought was Golden Brown by the Stranglers, actually. If you know that song.
No.
Yeah.
Don't know the song, don't know the group.
Great song. If you hear it, you will know it, because it's been on so many movies and so much stuff. It's a real classic kind of new wave punk type band, and this was one of their slower songs. The song's actually, I think, about heroin, but it sounds like a love song. It's just somebody going on a heroin trip and singing about it. First album I bought was by a band called The Jam, who did Going Underground, which is again has been on a lot of movies and stuff. You'd not have you heard this song, but I think the album was called The Gift at the time, and it was like their third or fourth studio album. And again, that was more of a new wave kind of post-punk type band.
Right.
All the time.
Gotcha.
Now, are there any foods you hated as a child but you love now, or vice versa? Or any foods you loved as a child but now can't stand?
No. I mean, my palate has expanded, but the ones that I hated as a child, I still hate to this day. I hate beans and I hate curry.
When you say beans, like all types of beans?
All types of beans.
Yeah. Now, curry is because of bad experience. With beans, did you just never like them?
No, I can't stand beans.
Oh, wow.
I can't eat refried beans. I can't eat any kind of beans except green beans, which I don't consider really a bean.
Yeah.
But no, I can't tolerate beans.
Now, until the age of 12, I hated cheese. which is ridiculous because now it's like one of my
Who
favorite foods
hates
in the world.
cheese?
Oh, I did before the age of 12. So
See,
now it's one of my favorite foods in the world.
This kind of explains a lot about you.
Yeah.
You know, that's that English upbringing.
Yeah.
That you would hate cheese. Maybe you hated Italians.
Why, cheese isn't Italian?
Or the Swiss.
Well,
No, there's a lot.
That's just a type of cheese, mate.
I think that was
French cheese as well. There's English cheese.
No, there's no French cheese.
Yes, there is. There's lots of different types of French cheese.
I don't believe you.
There is. There's Swiss cheeses, English cheeses.
Swiss cheese is from Switzerland. That's not French.
It's German cheeses. It's all types of cheese, mate.
American cheese sucks, though.
Oh, it does suck. That's plastic cheese.
That's kind of depressing for America that they would put themselves behind and say, this is American cheese. It's like, really? I mean, it's like pretend cheddar.
Right.
It's like watered down cheddar that tastes nasty.
You've got a rich country like America, then you've got Mexico below us, and some Mexican cheeses are awesome.
They're all awesome.
Yeah. And then you've got, again, American cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Kraft singles.
Didn't bother.
It's not even really cheese.
It's not, is it?
Yeah, it's sad.
Have you ever tried grilling American cheese on toast? It stays in that plastic coating they give it. It doesn't even melt properly.
Yeah, it doesn't melt. It's sad.
Ridiculous. So, what's your favourite hobby now? Not as a child. It had that in parentheses.
Now?
Yeah, what's your favourite hobby?
Podcasting. I think that's the only hobby I have now.
Yeah. I'd say outside of computer games.
Well, I do like video games.
Yeah, video games.
Yeah, I do like video games.
And obviously podcasting now, I suppose, is taking over.
I mean, is this a hobby, though? Are we doing a hobby?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't want to sell ourselves short.
Right. If you had to choose a favourite movie, what would it be? And if you can't choose a specific one, you can name up to 5 movies.
Empire Strikes Back.
Favorite movie of all time.
Favorite movie of all time. Empire Strikes Back. 100%.
Yeah.
That's an easy one for me.
Yeah. I can't.
Greatest movie. It's one of those movies, and yes, for most of the listeners, we're Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
But Empire Strikes Back is one of those movies where if you somehow today had never heard or seen anything about Star Wars, you could show that movie to somebody. They didn't have to see A New Hope, and it stands alone as a great movie. You have that good and evil struggle. You have that crescendo ending with Vader and Luke. You feel like the bad guys won. You're like, I want more. I want more. I want to walk out of a movie saying, I want more. Empire Strikes Back delivers all of that.
Yeah, but you changed your mind after the prequels, just like me, and decided that, the Sith were actually the good guys.
Well, yes. Yeah, the Empire were the good guys.
Yeah,
I mean, all they were trying to do was rule the galaxy, law and order, all that good stuff.
Planets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we have Darth Vader sitting there on our little credenza that we have in our studio.
Yeah. I don't really have a favorite movie because it changes. I think V for Vendetta, Inception, and probably... that might be it, actually. Yeah, those two. It varies between those two, depending what mood I'm in.
Well, so second place would be Casablanca. I think Casablanca is just a perfect film. I mean, it really is. It's always high on the charts and everything, but it's a perfect film. I mean, Humphrey Bogart, the character that he plays, the whole storyline behind it, some of the quotes from that. It's a perfect movie. And it's a short movie, too. And I love the black and white version. And I even got you to watch it because you thought it was some kind of goofy romance thing or whatever. And then you finally watch it and like, hey, it's actually a good movie.
Yeah, I can't do romance movies. I mean, I know you watch them with your wife and you made me download you about 60 romance movies, but I just can't do them. I just don't like them.
But Casablanca, even though it's categorized as a romance, it's still a really good movie.
Yeah. No, that is a good movie.
And it's really not a romance movie,
Yeah.
but because the romance part of it, you get women wrapped around it. I mean, I've taken my wife to see that in the theater when it gets re-released or whatever, and she hates old movies. She wants to watch new movies, but she still loves it. It's just such a great movie.
Now, I know you mentioned this earlier, actually, about your favourite sport or sports. You said you're a big hockey fan. Is hockey your favourite sport over football?
You know, if you pinned me down and said, what's my favorite sport, it would be hockey.
Yeah.
I love ice hockey.
Yeah.
There is no better sport to watch live than ice hockey.
Yeah.
And I understand why there are so many people that, especially down south here in Texas, where they just don't get hockey until they actually go to a game live. It's bizarre rules. It's on an ice rink. They're all on skates. This is not something we're used to in Texas. But when you go to a hockey game and you're sitting there behind the glass and you're watching it, you get it. You get the intensity. I mean, yeah, you know, you play for like 50 seconds and yeah, if something happens, something stops and then you got to reset the game or whatever. But the intensity of the game, I love hockey.
Yeah.
I've always loved hockey.
Yeah. Now, obviously, soccer is my favourite sport, and football.
You don't say.
And
really?
Yeah.
I mean, I figured it was cricket, you know.
And American football was my second favourite sport for a long time, but then hockey actually overcame football, especially in the last 2-3 years. But I remember I used to play ice hockey on the Sega Mega Drive, or as in America it's called the Sega Genesis system. And this was actually at college in England. We used to play NHL 95 and NHL 96.
Oh, yeah.
And none of us had seen a hockey game on TV even, but we just used to love to play it, and we'd just play the heck out of it like almost every day. And so that got my love of hockey. And, you know, by the end of the first year playing it, I knew every team, I knew most of the stars on every team, and yet I'd still never seen a game on TV because they just didn't used to show it in England. So now, yeah, actually my love for hockey is growing. I will actually watch, you know, games if they like, if I'm at home,
Right.
and they're on TV, I'll watch them. And I've been to a few games. I mean, here we have, you know, in Texas, at least North Texas, we have, you know, the Dallas Stars, and I think is it the Brahmas, which is the
So
semi-pro game.
I love going to see the Fort Worth Brahmas. I think that now they're called the Lone Star Brahmas or whatever. It's changed over the years the way the Brahmas are, but it's good hockey.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to a Brahmas game and see some really good hockey.
Yeah.
And for very cheap.
Yeah.
You know,
it's super cheap.
Yeah, you don't have to pay $100 for
Yeah.
a seat. I mean, you're paying like, and I don't want to quote their prices by any means, but you can pay like 10 or 15 bucks and sit on the glass.
Yeah.
And they also don't try to steal your money for food or whatever. It's free parking, and it's great hockey. These are kids that are trying to go to the next level, and so they're out there fighting. And that's what I like about hockey is the people that are trying to get to the next level, because they're trying to really get out there and really show what they can do so they can go to the next level.
Yeah.
That's good hockey.
Yeah. Now, I don't know why they've bothered asking this next question if they've actually listened to the podcast, but they said social or antisocial?
Antisocial.
Antisocial.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
We can go to the next
Yeah,
one.
I've got like 8 people I like, and that's it.
Oh, good for
Yeah.
you. You
Well,
got
one of
more,
them-
you've got more than I do.
One of them includes my dog.
Well, that's not a people.
It is. She is people.
Yeah. Well, so that's one of those things that make us antisocial.
Yeah, exactly. What's your biggest worry for your kids as they grow up?
That we're going to get to the point to where we are so woke that you can't have an opinion anymore. That you seriously get out there and you say your opinion and somebody attacks you. That's my biggest fear.
Right.
And on the opposite side of that if your opinion is amongst the majority, that you quelch the minority in that opinion.
Right.
We got to keep free speech alive.
Yeah. I think for my son, as you know, he has autism, and so he lives in a bit of a bubble in terms of the people he's around and what he's affected by. So I'm not really so much worried about the effect of society and stuff and how it rubs off on him. I am kind of worried how it affects the environment around him, you know, in terms of, as you were saying, you know, the world as a whole, not just the United States, is getting so woke now that I think the experiences we used to be able to have as kids is being eroded so much that, you know, what you can say, what you can't say, what you are allowed to do, what you aren't allowed to do, it's just getting narrowed down all the time. And it's probably my biggest worry for my son. Is really what is my biggest worry for me, you know, in terms of the freedoms I'll be allowed to have as a parent to be able to parent him, because there's, you know, the government tries to put in more and more intervention. Do I, at a point, have no school choice for him? You know, do I have to do this? You know, and that's the thing. It's more of the effect on me that has the knock-on effect for him, because he's probably not going to be in the position where he can make the same choices your kids are going to be able to make as they grow up.
Sure.
Now, this one's a difficult one. If you couldn't live in Texas, where would you live?
Oh, what are they called? The
moon.
U.S. No, not the moon. Not Mars. The U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yeah. Why?
Great weather. Have the tropical lifestyle, but still be in the U.S.
Right.
Be in a U.S. territory. Everybody speaking English. I don't have to worry about money exchange. Why not?
I think for me, in terms of mainland states, maybe either Florida, just because I want to see all the crazy people. I read a story the other day that a man threw an alligator through a Wendy's drive-through window for some reason.
No.
That could only happen in Florida. Or Colorado, just because of how beautiful it is.
Colorado is a beautiful state.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of beautiful states.
Yeah.
You know, and I see Florida. I mean, maybe Tampa, Florida might be somewhere I would like to live. But
down there, and the climate is just fantastic. But yeah, Colorado, it's beautiful. You know, the mountains and stuff. I love hiking, and so that would be fantastic for me. And other than that, I guess Hawaii. I mean, I went to Hawaii now like eight and a half years ago, and I absolutely loved it there. I think happily live in Hawaii.
Yeah. No, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Plus, I'd be closer to Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Anywhere closer to her is a good move.
Could we move the podcast to Hawaii?
Yeah.
Just so we can be next door to Tulsi Gabbard?
Yeah, that's the good
You need to
choice.
work on that.
I will.
Yeah, work on that.
Yeah.
Let's make that happen.
I'm going to work to try and get her on the podcast at some point as well.
Yes.
Yeah. If you won $100 million on the lottery, and again, if they've ever listened to our podcast, I don't know why they're asking this, would you still work?
No.
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 That's an easy one.
Sorry, I'd like to say,
Yep.
no, I'd still like to do something constructive and feel like I was contributing to society. No.
No, I wouldn't.
I'd go switch straight to the hobbies, video games and doing the podcast. That would pretty much be it. I might do some volunteer work.
Do you think we'd still do the podcast if we got that money?
I think so.
I don't think we would.
I would.
I don't think we would. We'd say, well, I've got all this money. Why should we put this time and effort into this?
I don't know.
Wouldn't you rather play Rocket League? And I'd say, yeah, let's just play video games.
Yeah, but my Apple Watch keeps telling me to stand up every now and then, so I'd have to do something else to.
Well, that's because you haven't turned it off.
Well, right. Here's one serious question: biggest disappointment of adulthood that you thought would be awesome as a kid?
Man, that's a tough one. I'd have to say, when you're a kid, you just think adults have it all figured out, and adults don't have it all figured out. But adults hide that from kids. They want kids to think that the adults have it all figured out. As an adult, hell, even to this day, I don't have it all figured out. That'd be my biggest disappointment.
Yeah, I think there was a meme which was circulating a couple of years ago, and it said something like, a few decades ago, people thought that the lack of access to information was the problem of why people make stupid decisions, and it turns out that's not actually the problem.
Right.
Because now we have free access, even in our pockets, and even on my wrist through the Apple Watch of, I can access anything. And, all this extra information and access to information really hasn't made people make any better decisions. If anything, it's just given you an opportunity to make worse decisions. Like, I don't think something like the Tide Pod Challenge, would have ever become a thing before the internet. It's not like Nickelodeon. We're going to show an episode which says, "Hey kids, go away and see how many Tide Pods you can eat," or something like that. So I think, that thing that you think when you're an adult, you'll always know the best decision and everything would be easy because you'll have lots of money and you can do this. Adulthood was a big disappointment in terms of your hopes and dreams.
And you realize the schedule you're placed under. Like right now, I told our clubhouse group that I was going to start a room at this time. We're not going to say what time it is. And we're recording, and I'm looking over at my phone, realizing I'm supposed to start this room on Clubhouse, and we're recording. So it's like, to hell with that. We're going to do our podcast, and if we do the room, we do the room, and if we don't, we don't.
Right.
The responsibility sucks.
Yeah.
Being an adult and the responsibility of being an adult sucks because you look at it as a kid and you say, well, I just want to be able to do what I want when I want. Then you realize all that responsibility sucks. I mean, you can eat ice cream for dinner. Yeah, you're an adult. You get to choose what you want to do, but then the consequences come with that as well. Yeah. And the consequences suck. So
diarrhea is not as much fun as an adult as it was when you were a kid.
No.
Last question. Where do you see your podcast in a year's time?
I think you and I agreed that no matter what happens, if we just still do the indie podcasting route like we've done, we're not going to change.
Right.
I think we got to go to the whole Joe Rogan thing of he's doing his thing, and he got a big freaking contract, and good for him, and he still does what he wants to do. And you and I are going to do what we want to do. And when it becomes unfun, we're going to say, nope, we're done with this, and we're not going to change unless we get a big check.
Right.
Then we'll fake it.
Then we'll change. Yeah.
Yeah. Then we'll change. But that big check is going to be like, okay, you got to do this for like 5 years, and then at 5 years and 1 day, then we're punting.
I mean, over time, we have become a little bit more professional. I mean, once we actually turned our mics the correct way round, after about 4 weeks, things started moving up.
Hey, and we've upgraded our equipment a little bit.
Not Pro recently.
Yeah, not our microphones. I mean, that's probably the next step.
Yeah, we tidied the office for the first time in 7 months.
Yeah, it took us 7 months to drag out the pile of empty boxes and all that free advertising for Ziploc bags because there was that Ziploc bag box sitting on top of that. But, what are you going to do?
Yeah. No, I think we'll just be on like, I don't know, episode 180. I think we'll be in line then. In about 12 months' time, we should have got probably close to 1 million downloads by then, the way things are going. Maybe you've got a little bit more professional. We might upgrade the mics. But outside of that, I think we'll still just keep talking about the same crap we do every week.
No. And we do appreciate, especially this fan that sent all of these questions. I mean, we really appreciate everybody that has communicated with us and done all of that stuff. I mean, that makes us feel better about what we're doing. And yeah, there's a lot of people listening. And I gotta, once again, as the Wolf said, we're worried about you, India. With the COVID thing. I mean, we hope everything's going well over there. We're praying for you, all that good stuff. But with all that said, thanks for tuning into this episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wolf and the Shepherd podcast. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, thewolfandtheshepherd.com, to your friends and colleagues. And please leave us a positive review on iTunes when you get a chance. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for additional content. Join us next time for another episode of The Wolf and the Shepherd.